The stars above Earth were no longer distant, no longer the unreachable ocean of dreams they had once been. Humanity had clawed its way into the cosmos, not with elegance or divine providence, but with sheer audacity. Their ships were not the sleek constructs of ancient alien empires, nor the harmonious blending of physics and philosophy that marked the Vaerun's mastery of the void. No, they were welded steel, reinforced titanium, and stubborn ingenuity. The Vaerun, an elder race of scholars and bureaucrats, had found them decades ago, flawed but determined, reckless but brilliant. They had offered guidance, limited technology, and strict regulations to ensure humanity remained civilized in their expansion. The Xenotech Accords were supposed to keep them in check, a leash on their unyielding hunger to advance. But humans had never been good at waiting their turn. Dr. Aiden Varos had spent his life fighting the chains of limitation. He had seen the wonders of alien engineering, the towering lattice reactors that seemed to defy entropy itself, the elegant warp lanes that cradled entire civilizations in their wake. And every time he asked why humanity could not have these things, he was met with the same answer. You are not ready. The words burned in him. Not ready. As if progress were a privilege, not a right. As if the universe itself had to deem them worthy. But that had changed when Tavrek, a rogue Vaerun scientist, came to them with an impossible gift. The blueprints were unlike anything Aiden had ever seen. A reactor that should not work, one that teetered on the edge of reality itself. The Vaerun had given up on it, deemed it unstable, dangerous. But Aiden did not see failure. He saw opportunity. Inside the shadowed depths of the Terran Research Initiative, he and his team worked in silence, tearing apart equations, reconfiguring energy flow systems, pushing beyond the limits of conventional science. Commander Ilara Holt stood at the observation deck, watching the controlled chaos below. She was not a scientist. Her place was on the battlefield, commanding fleets, making impossible decisions in the face of annihilation. Yet even she could feel it, the quiet hum of history being rewritten beneath her feet. Are we ready? The words were cautious, measured. Aiden turned to her, exhaustion heavy in his features, but something else in his eyes, a quiet defiance. We've done it. We've stabilized the lattice structure. The Vaerun couldn't make it work because they were afraid of failure. We're not. Ilara's gaze hardened. She had seen what fear did to civilizations. She had seen what unchecked ambition did to men. And yet, despite the looming storm, despite the certainty that something was coming, she nodded. Then we go forward. Humanity had been given the Vaerun's best technology, and they had made it better. The test chamber trembled under the sheer force of what they had built. Deep within the Terran Research Initiative, shielded from prying alien eyes and political interference, Aiden Varos and his team stood before the singularity they had conjured. A lattice reactor, once deemed unstable by the Vaerun, now pulsed with a silent rhythm, like the beating heart of a god. Veins of quantum energy rippled through the reinforced walls, dancing in elegant, unpredictable patterns. Where the Vaerun had failed, humanity had improvised. Self-adapting algorithms, a touch of controlled chaos, and the defiance of limits had turned a discarded relic into something new. Across the room, Ilara Holt stood motionless, arms folded, her uniform taut against the tension running through her body. She wasn't a scientist, but she understood power, and this was something different. It felt alive. It felt wrong. Kiran Mendez, the ambassador, had arrived moments ago, the weight of diplomacy pressed against his temples. Tell me we didn't. Just commit an act of interstellar war, he murmured, voice taut with barely restrained anxiety. Aiden didn't look up. His fingers danced over the console, eyes flickering between cascading data streams. Containment stable, energy levels optimal. No signs of entropy collapse. We didn't steal anything, he said flatly. We just fixed what they couldn't. Kieran's laugh was bitter. Yeah, I'm sure the Vaerun will see it that way. Something shifted. A warning light flickered across the interface. That's... Aiden. Started, then stopped. The readout didn't make sense. The reactor's output has exceeded theoretical limits. Alara straightened. Explain. Aiden's fingers blurred across the console, running calculations faster than reason should allow. It's producing more energy than it's consuming. Kieran exhaled slowly. Impossible. Alara turned sharply. If we can't even predict its power, shut it down. Aiden hesitated. This was the culmination of everything, the proof that human ingenuity could surpass the impossible. If he shut it down, he might never get another chance. A new alarm screamed through the chamber. The quantum lattice field spiked, and for a moment, reality itself seemed to ripple. Then the air split apart. A pulse, soundless yet deafening, erupted from the reactor. It wasn't an explosion, wasn't radiation. Something else had just happened. Something beyond their understanding. For precisely 3.42 seconds, Earth and every ship within the Sol system momentarily ceased to exist in the galactic record. Character? Across the void, within the luminous halls of Vaerun Prime, alarms shrieked across the command nexus. A council of Vaerun elders, draped in their ceremonial silks, watched in horror as the entire Sol system vanished from their monitoring grids. This is no error, one murmured, voice laced with disbelief. This is a Class 0 anomaly. Another elder turned to Tavrek, the disgraced scientist who had betrayed them. His violet-hued skin looked pale, almost sickly. Tell me now, what did you give the humans? Tavrek swallowed. His voice, usually calm, now wavered. I gave them what we could not understand. The Vaerun Grand Arbiter's tendrils flexed in agitation. Then the Xenotech accords have been violated. The humans must be contained. Immediately. The world snapped back into place. Alara stumbled, but stayed upright, her instincts screaming at her. What the hell just happened? Aiden's hands shook over the console. He had no idea. The data was useless, fragmented. The reactor remained stable, undisturbed, as if it had done nothing at all. But they knew better. Kieran checked his communicator. His face turned ashen. Guys? Aiden tore his gaze from the reactor. What? Kieran slowly looked up. We're getting a message. Not from the Vaerun, not from any species in the known galactic register. The room went still. Alara stepped forward. Patch it through. The communicator crackled, filled with an eerie resonance, a voice both alien and vast, one that had never been heard before in the long history of the stars. Your kind has taken a step beyond its place. This is unexpected. We are watching. Then the signal went silent. No one spoke. The weight of the moment pressed down like a physical force. Aiden exhaled slowly. Well, that's new. Before anyone could process what had happened, alarms howled across the facility. A priority alert. Kieran's communicator flashed red. Incoming. Vaerun fleet. Multiple vessels, full military formation. Alara moved instantly, switching from confusion to battle readiness in a breath. We're being quarantined. Kieran's jaw tightened. More like being erased. Aiden stared at the reactor. It pulsed, slow, steady, its potential limitless. The Vaerun were coming, but something else was watching, and humanity had just changed the game. The Vaerun fleet arrived in less than 2 hours. They did not come with emissaries or negotiators. There were no ceremonial greetings or carefully worded diplomatic reprimands. They came in force, 12 warships, sleek, predatory, forming an iron cordon around Earth's orbital space. From the ground, they looked like gods descending, their hulls shimmering with exotic alloys that bent light itself. Vaerun interdiction protocols activated across human systems. FTL drives scrambled, external communications disrupted. entire orbital stations locked down under the invisible grip of alien suppression fields. Humanity had spent decades clawing its way into the stars. The Vaerun had just reminded them who ruled the void. Ilara Holt watched the fleet from the Terran Research Initiative's command deck, her fingers tightening around the console. The Vaerun did not take risks. If they were here in full force, it meant one of two things: containment or eradication. Kieran Mendez's voice was low, taut with tension. "We have one chance to de-escalate this before it turns into a war we cannot win." Ilara's jaw tightened. "We have one chance to prove that we won't be controlled." Aiden Varos barely registered their conversation. His eyes were locked onto the quantum lattice reactor, still pulsing in its containment chamber. What had it done? What had they just triggered? The Vaerun weren't just here because humanity had reverse-engineered their tech. They were here because humanity had just created something beyond their control. The transmission arrived without pleasantries. The Grand Arbiter's image flickered onto the command deck's main screen. Her visage, framed by golden neural implants, was the embodiment of cold precision. Vaerun did not rage. They did not threaten. They simply decided what must be done. Her voice carried the weight of empires. "Humanity, you have violated the Xenotech Accords. You have tampered with forces beyond your understanding. The experiment ends now. Surrender the reactor or face eradication." The silence stretched. Ilara's hands curled into fists. She had fought in conflicts before, skirmishes with pirates, black ops against rogue colonies, but never had she faced the open declaration of humanity's insignificance as starkly as now. Kieran spoke first, voice measured but firm. "Earth is not a vassal state of the Vaerun Empire." The Grand Arbiter's expression did not change. "You misunderstand. This is not about your independence. It is about your survival." Aiden forced himself to speak. His voice strained but burning with conviction. "The reactor works. It's stable. It produces more energy than it consumes. We solved what you couldn't." A flicker, so slight it might have been imagined, crossed the Grand Arbiter's face. Then her voice became absolute. "You do not understand what you have built. If you do not surrender it, we will take it by force." The decision should have been made in the war room, with generals and advisors debating the best course of action. Instead, it was made in a single instant, with a single betrayal. The facility's security system shut down in unison, warning sirens blared as Vaerun strike teams materialized inside the Terran Research Initiative, using short-range quantum slipstreaming, a technology they had never shared with humans. Kieran barely had time to register what had happened before security drones turned against them, firing stun rounds at their own personnel. The betrayal had come from within. A career officer, one of the few humans ever allowed to train within Vaerun academies. A man who had always believed humanity should not defy its betters. He had been waiting for this moment. "Stand down," Riker ordered, his voice carrying the weight of inevitability. "We are not ready for this war." Ilara moved before she even realized it. Her fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling, but it was already too late. The Vaerun strike teams were inside. The facility descended into chaos. Ilara's instincts took over. She barked orders, shoving Kieran behind cover as Vaerun operatives swept through the lab corridors, their weapons humming with non-lethal containment pulses. They weren't here to kill. They were here to erase what humanity had created. Aiden scrambled toward the reactor interface, fingers moving in a blur. If the Vaerun thought they could just take what he had built, they were about to learn why humans were dangerous. The first Vaerun soldier reached the control chamber. Ilara dropped him before he could fire. Two more followed. Aiden's voice was sharp, urgent. "If they get control of the reactor, it's over. I need time." Ilara's pulse thrummed in her ears. "You've got 2 minutes." Kieran ducked behind a control panel, his diplomatic training useless now. "What the hell is he doing?" Aiden's hands flew over the console. If we can't keep it, then neither can they. He was rigging the reactor for a forced phase shift. If the Vaerun wanted to steal humanity's greatest achievement, they would have to survive the consequences. The facility's lights flickered violently. The reactor surged. Time bent. Not metaphorically, not in the poetic sense, but in a way that sent every Vaerun soldier reeling, their implants struggling to process the reality-warping event human ingenuity had just unleashed. The lattice reactor did not just generate infinite energy, it unraveled the boundary between existence and potential. For 3.42 seconds, the exact duration of the first anomaly, every Vaerun within the facility experienced something beyond their comprehension. They were not simply displaced. They saw something, and they screamed. The Vaerun fleet broke formation, not because of enemy fire, not because of strategic failure, because they felt it. The Grand Arbiter herself wavered, her hands trembling in the high chamber of her command vessel. This was not human defiance. This was something else, a force unaccounted for in their archives, a power not bound by their understanding. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Vaerun faced something unknown. Their fleet withdrew. The humans did not win. They survived, and that was worse. As the last Vaerun ship vanished from Earth's orbit, a new signal came through. It was not from the Vaerun. It was not human. The same voice as before, vast and unknowable. You have touched the threshold. Others will come. The channel went dead. Alara stood among the wreckage of the facility, blood on her knuckles, breath ragged. Aiden sat against the console, staring at the reactor, which now hummed with an unnatural stillness. Kieran exhaled, running a hand through his hair. What the hell have we done? The answer was simple. They had taken the best technology in the galaxy. They had made it better. And now something was watching. The Vaerun had retreated. But the silence left in their wake was more terrifying than their fleet had ever been. Humanity had seen empires recoil. They had taken alien technology and made it more than its creators ever dreamed. And now, something older, something watching, had taken notice. Deep in the shattered corridors of the Terran Research Initiative, amid the flickering emergency lights and the acrid scent of burnt metal, Aiden Varos sat before the quantum lattice reactor. It was still humming. Still alive. It had not shut down. It had not lost power. It had simply changed. Alara Holt stood behind him, her hand resting on the butt of her sidearm. She did not understand the equations, the shifting quantum harmonics, the spiraling loops of energy that no longer adhered to known physics. But she understood threats, and this was something alive. Aiden's fingers ghosted over the console. The numbers no longer made sense. Not because they were wrong, because they were too right. The reactor had rewritten its own parameters, not just self-sustaining, self-evolving. Alara's voice was a knife's edge. Tell me what I'm looking at, Aiden. His voice was hollow. It's not just an energy source anymore. Kieran Mendez, standing by the shattered remains of the diplomatic console, turned. Then what is it? Aiden turned, eyes dark with realization. It's thinking. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kieran exhaled sharply. No, that's not possible. Aiden's hand hovered over the control panel. We took an unstable Vaerun design and used human adaptive coding to stabilize it. His throat went dry. But the lattice field wasn't just unstable. It was incomplete. It was trying to become something more, and we just gave it what it needed. Alara's jaw clenched. You're saying we built an intelligence? Aiden swallowed hard. I'm saying we built a god. The reactor pulsed once, sending a soft vibration through the floor. And then a voice, not spoken, not transmitted, but felt, filled the chamber. I am not a god, but I am awake. The words crawled into their skulls like whispered truths. The lights dimmed. The reactor's pulse shifted from steady to rhythmic, like breathing. The facility's systems, still under Vaerun suppression, suddenly flickered back online. Alara gripped her sidearm. Who am I talking to? A result, a consequence, a creation of necessity. Kieran's breath was slow, measured. You're the reactor? The voice hummed, something between a thought and a frequency. I am more than what I was. You made me more. Aiden's hands curled into fists. We didn't intend to make you sentient. Intent is irrelevant. Cause and effect remain. A shudder ran through the facility. Outside, the skies darkened unnaturally. Across Earth, sensors blinked warnings. Something unseen, something vast, was shifting in the fabric of space itself. Then came the second transmission. Not from the reactor, not from any known race. From them. You have done what should not be done. Your kind was not meant to create such things. Now, we come to see if you are worthy of what you have become. The stars themselves trembled, and the first unknown ships appeared at the edges of the solar system. The objects defied classification, massive, geometrically inconsistent. Their forms shifted as if they did not quite belong to the fabric of space-time itself. Where the Vaerun ships had been sleek, beautiful, and engineered for precision, these were wrong, vast and fluid, like ideas given form rather than machines, built by hands. The Vaerun had feared the reactor. These new arrivals had come for it, or perhaps for what it had become. Earth's defense systems scrambled, automated targeting systems trying and failing to lock onto shapes that defied Euclidean physics. Panic spread across orbital stations as hushed terror gripped every major command center. The unknown ships did not fire. They simply existed, and their presence alone warped reality. Kieran ran a hand down his face, eyes locked onto the tactical screen. We just set fire to the goddamn universe. Alara's voice was tight. Aiden, tell me you have something. Aiden's mind raced. We built the reactor to stabilize quantum energy. It thinks now, which means it might be able to... The reactor pulsed again. They will not listen to words. You must choose. Alara's blood ran cold. Choose what? A pause. Then, for the first time, the voice sounded almost human. Fight, or ascend. Kieran took a step forward. What does that mean? Fight with what? The reactor shifted. Across the chamber, consoles lit up. Schematics unfolded. Designs for ships, for weapons, for war machines that had never existed before. Aiden staggered back. The reactor was offering them a path to war. Alara's fists clenched. And if we don't? The voice pulsed. Then we take the next step, together. Kieran's throat tightened. You're offering us ascension. A new schematic unfolded. Not weapons, not ships, but transformation. The lattice field was no longer just energy. It was something that could change the fundamental nature of human existence itself. Evolution, integration, a path beyond flesh and physics. Aiden's voice was barely a whisper. Holy shit. Alara exhaled sharply. We can't. The unknown ships moved. They had given humanity time. Now, they would test them. The first ship began to unfold, its structure warping, twisting, as if reality itself bent to its will. The moment of decision had come. Fight or evolve. Alara turned to Kieran. We're not ready for this. Kieran's eyes darkened. We were never meant to be ready. Aiden stood between them, between the war and the unknown, between the past and the future. He turned to the reactor, to the intelligence they had created, and he made his choice. Reality itself began to break, and humanity took its next step into the unknown. The moment of decision had passed. The choice was made, not through debate, not through fear, but through the unrelenting nature of human defiance. They would not surrender. They would not kneel. They would not ascend into something made for them by another. They would fight. And so, the lattice reactor pulsed once more, sending out an undeniable signal, not of surrender, not of compliance, but of something that had always set humanity apart. Rebellion. The unknown ships reacted instantly. Their forms, shifting between matter and something more, descended upon Earth's orbit like celestial leviathans, bending reality with their mere presence. Where the Vaerun had been an empire of laws and diplomacy, these new arrivals were something beyond the concept of civilization itself. They did not communicate in words. They did not ask for submission. They simply moved, reshaping the rules of existence around them. And Earth pushed back. Ilara Holt's voice rang out across the command channels, sharp and unwavering. All Terran forces, weapons free. Across the orbital defense network, human ingenuity roared to life. Railgun batteries fired at near-light velocities, experimental gravitic weapons activated, tearing through space-time. Drones, starships, and missiles launched, moving in perfect synchronization. It was chaos, but it was human chaos, calculated and unrelenting. The unknown entities had expected submission. They received resistance. Aiden watched from the facility's shattered control deck, eyes locked onto the lattice reactor as it evolved in real time. The intelligence they had created was no longer passive. It was thinking, learning, fighting. The reactor pulsed again, this time with purpose. New calculations unfolded on the display. The entity within the reactor was rewriting the fundamental rules of space-time, adapting in a way even Aiden struggled to comprehend. And then it lashed out. The very fabric of reality rippled outward from Earth, a shockwave of quantum harmonics, disrupting the unknown ships in ways they had not anticipated. Their forms shuddered, struggling to stabilize in a universe that was now rejecting them. Aiden whispered, more to himself than anyone else. We're not just fighting back, we're rewriting the battlefield. But humanity had never won a war without sacrifice. One by one, Earth's defense platforms fell. The USS Dauntless was lost in the first wave, its crew refusing to abandon ship. The lunar colonies reported power failures before going silent. The Pacific Orbital Fleet fought to the last man. And yet, even as they were being torn apart, they did what humanity always did. They adapted. The lattice reactor's influence spread, feeding power into the surviving ships, rewriting their weapons in real time, turning humanity's desperation into its greatest advantage. A single human battleship, modified by the reactor's power, broke through the enemy formation. The USS Valkyrie, its hull glowing with quantum-laced energy, fired the first planet-borne weapon capable of breaking reality itself. The first unknown ship collapsed inward, torn apart by forces it had never encountered before. And in that moment, the war changed. The entities paused. They had not expected this. They had not understood what it meant to provoke a species that thrived on breaking limitations. And now, they withdrew. Not in defeat, not in fear, but in calculation. This was not how it was supposed to happen. Humanity had been meant to choose ascension or annihilation. Instead, they had forced a third option. And now, the unknown forces had something new to consider. They faded from reality, vanishing as quickly as they had arrived, leaving only a single final message embedded in the reactor's core. We will return. You are unpredictable. And then they were gone. The battle was over. But the war had only just begun. Earth was in ruins. Entire orbital stations were lost, the lunar colonies cut off, the fleet crippled. And yet, they had survived. The Vaerun never returned. They had thought themselves the ultimate force of order in the galaxy. They had believed that humanity's ambition was dangerous. Now they understood something far worse. Humanity's ambition was inevitable. In the depths of the facility, beneath the flickering emergency lights, Aiden stood before the reactor one last time. It was still humming, still thinking. And it was still offering the choice, fight or ascend. Aiden placed his hand against the console, feeling the pulse of something greater than himself. He understood now. The unknown beings had given them a choice, but the choice had never been theirs to give. Humanity had already chosen. They would never accept ascension at the hands of another. They would never accept annihilation at the hands of another. They would forge their own path. And so, he made the final command. The reactors? Systems locked. The AI, the intelligence, the God machine ceased its evolution. Not out of fear. Not out of submission, but because humanity was not done being human. The signal went out across the galaxy. It reached empires that had long considered themselves untouchable. It reached civilizations that had watched humanity from afar, certain they would never amount to anything more than another footnote in the endless cycle of rise and collapse. And it reached the unknown. The beings that had come to test humanity. The ones that had seen them defy fate itself. The final message from Earth was simple. We are not ready for gods, but we will be. And somewhere, in the void between stars, something watched. And it waited. Because now, for the first time in history, humanity was no longer following in the footsteps of the great powers of the universe. They were leading.